Hey Chai listeners, welcome to Chai After Dark and to another edition of the Saturday Sip. I'm here with my friend Lexi Butler. Lexi has a podcast called Sit with Lexi B. She's an advocate for Black women and she works in tech. Today we talk about all things The Real Housewives of New York. Obviously the whole Uba and Bryn drama, and we definitely talk about Jessel as well. So enjoy.
I'll never forget they went to Anguilla and Jessel was like, I just struggled so much in New York.
Mm-hmm.
I lived at my uncle's house. I didn't have any money. And I'm not going to lie, when Sai pushed back, it was like, that's actually complete bull. Not trying to degrade your experience, but as a born and raised New Yorker who's had negative dollars in her bank, we're not going to sit here and do a Prussian Olympics about what you did and did not have.
Yeah.
As a person who did an internship in New York in college, made no money, and couldn't even afford the McDonald's $1 menu, when Jessel said that, I literally almost threw something at the TV.
Okay. Yeah.
I was
And that's
sleeping
fair.
on someone's couch who I didn't know while trying to get through this fashion internship. Now, this new season that came about, getting to know Jessel more, I think it's just Jessel. And I think that Jessel has no ill intent. I think Jessel was raised as, like, in many ways, a little princess. And I'm not mad at her. Low-key, I'm a little jealous, right? I think that she was raised very privileged. And I think that when she says things like, I struggled in New York, she did struggle when she first came here. Because she said that. She's like, my parents didn't give me money. This is what I wanted to do. I got on a plane and did it. There was privilege in that, but that doesn't mean that there was lack of struggle. And I think that Jessel's such an interesting character to show that, like, you can have a lot of privilege and also have a lot of struggle. And that can be the same story. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I don't know her whole family history, but I don't think she grew up rich, right? But I think that the thing with, like, South Asian people is, like, you'll have an uncle somewhere and they're not going to not let you stay with them. So she's going to have a home, she's going to have food. That's not something she needs to concern herself with, which is a huge privilege, like you're saying, right? To not have to, I mean, that's literally what most people spend most of their money on, right? So then going from there, she was able to build herself up and be self-reliant. But yes, that's a very different struggle and conversation than Sai. But I'm not convinced that in England with her family, she grew up very privileged and she was treated like a princess. I think when South Asian people have any amount of success, especially South Asian women, they will act like a princess. That's their acceptable form of toxicity. So when we were talking about Welcome to Chippendales, I said that in American white culture, I think the acceptable toxicity is like a disgusting amount of peer pressure. And in South Asian culture, an acceptable form of toxicity is when you have status to punch down. So I think she has a little bit of that, like, well, I got to here, so now I can be a full-on princess, you know?
Yeah. And again, like I said, because how we judge people and how we decide if we want to be friends with them is 100% selfishly based on our trauma, right? Like, oh, you're triggering. Oh, I don't like that. Oh, you said that one thing and that irritated me, right? And so that's why I'm not going to lie. In season 1, I was like, girl, you got to go. Like, you are really getting on my nerves, right? And I also think that, I'm not going to lie to you, of all the women on the show, I think that there's a lot of similarities between me and Sai, which is maybe why I like her. Or better yet, maybe I understand her, right? So whenever Sai goes off, I'll be the first one in my girlfriend group chat, like, our girl was wrong, but I understand where she's coming from, right? But this season, totally team Jessel. The reunion, all I wanted to do was hold her. Because the stuff that happened to her, I was like, this is completely inappropriate. It really hurt me.
Yeah, and I think there's some cultural stuff in there too. We make this joke, like, obviously, you know, South Asian people have a lot of sex because it's very populated and India is one of the most populous countries. But I don't need to tell you how it went last night, you know? And that's part of our culture. But then you see Erin, she's like, look at my husband's, like, dick pic, right? And so there's this kind of, like, I think discomfort maybe Jessel has with that, or just like her and Puffett aren't like that way, and whatever their relationship is, they get picked at for that, right? For being just like friends, and he's kind of a dork, but that irked me the entire season, you know. And
It hurt
so
me too
yeah.
because when you think about it, the only person that's very open about the intimacy in well, let's talk about relationship is
Mhm.
Erin.
Mhm.
Size doesn't talk about the intimacy of her husband.
Yeah, that's right.
I think in season 1 at one point when they were talking about Jessel and Pavitt, she was like, "Yes, my husband and I have sex," like the end, right? But if you
Yeah.
actually watch the show, I do think it's very interesting that Jessel has picked on that, and I think it's very hurtful. I also
Yeah.
think it's hurtful because now we're talking about cross culture conversations. And so
Mhm.
when they were making that comment, where were they in Puerto Rico about Pavitt and Jessel and like the love of her life? I
Yeah.
remember watching that episode even before the reunion, and I was like, what are the aunties and uncles going to say about
Mhm. Yeah. And she brings that up, and that's a huge thing that would be very difficult to deal with in her community, you know?
yeah, well, I mean, I'm not Indian and it would be difficult to deal with in my community,
Yeah.
right? I think it's hurtful. I think it's so hurtful. And
Mhm.
so, number one, I am Team Jessel. It was a
Mhm.
slow burn, but I
Yeah.
want everything beautiful with Jessel. And number
Yeah.
two, I will be the first, I will be the many people on record to say that how they pick at Jessel's marriage, I think is very interesting because, like, Sai doesn't really give that many details about her marriage. I would
Mhm.
argue Jessel's husband's on the show more than Sai's husband.
Mhm.
Erin's the one who talks about the intimacy in her marriage the most. And for the record, that's her business. I'm not judging it. But
Mhm.
like even Jenna Lyons is allegedly married, but we'll just say she has a life partner. They together, y'all. They together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Jenna's not talking about it like that. So I'm out of all the women who are in these relationships, even Uba with Oliver, right?
Yeah.
Um, what she's like, we have a lot of sex. Thank you, Uba. And that's really about it. So I'm
Yeah.
always confused why Jessel's getting the brunt of that when there are other people on the show that have very strong foundational love lives that
Yeah.
we really don't discuss like that or pick apart. And
Yeah.
that's my concern, especially the type of culture that Jessel comes from, like people of color. And again, speaking very generally, we don't
Mhm.
talk about sex like this,
Yeah.
not this
Yeah.
openly. And I was proud of our girl Jessel at the reunion when
Mhm.
she stood up for herself.
Yeah. So what do you think about Pavitt calling Sai a bitch and bipolar? I think the bipolar was completely out of line. She was being bitchy though.
I don't care what I'm being, no man is going to call me that and think that's okay.
Okay.
And maybe for the record, maybe coming from the American South, I'm a little conservative in that, but I really
Mhm.
believe that. Like when we're talking about a group of women doing group of women things, whether you like it or love it, if you are a man who's not socially part of that group of women,
Mhm.
you let your wife come home and talk about that, and then you keep it moving.
Even
Um,
if she's talking about him and him going to Vietnam to, like, have sex with people?
I think this is different because this is on TV. So here's my thing. If Pop had said that to Jessel one on one in their kitchen and Sai never heard it, I wouldn't have an issue with it.
Okay.
Because that's a one-on-one conversation with you and your spouse,
Yeah.
right? And for the
Yeah.
record, Pavid has the right to be like, I don't like that. That's annoying. So
Yeah.
that's how I took it. That's how I think Pavid took it and Jessel took it. But I'm not
Mhm.
gonna lie to you. If I find out that one of my girlfriend's husbands called me something like that, we wouldn't be cool.
Mhm.
And it just is what it is. So,
Yeah.
and I forgot whether he called her that to her face or he called her that in a confessional. I
No,
forgot
he
the
called her that
venue.
in a conversation with Bryn and Jessel at
And
their
that's a
house.
problem for me. And that's
Yeah.
a problem for me. If he
Okay.
had said that to Jessel in the confinement of their home, that
Mhm.
is two spouses talking to each other. But when he did that in front of Bryn,
Yeah.
who number one is just messy,
Yeah.
period. Number
Yeah.
two, you know it's gonna get back to Sai, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
number three, now you are inserting yourself into that. I think it was wrong.
Yeah,
Like
it
I don't
just
do
it
that.
no, I see that. It struck a chord with me though because of this whole like snickering about like why would you go to Vietnam? I feel like from a family of immigrants who travel a lot, you do sometimes have miles and you can do something like that and it's just a fun thing, right? And it's not
I don't have an
people
issue
wouldn't
with him going to Vietnam.
and like that
Yeah,
that
culturally
felt
disrespectful. Vietnam's also a
yeah.
fabulous country and like part
Yeah.
of Vietnam. But,
Yeah.
but yeah, and great
Yeah.
food. But yeah, I think Pavit got caught up.
Yeah.
And if I was Pavitt, I would have walked away from the table. I'm going to let Jessel fight the battles of our marriage with her friends. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
So now we gotta talk about Uba and Bryn and that whole
Lord have
thing.
mercy.
Yeah.
Lord have mercy. Bryn's wrong. Bryn's
Yeah.
wrong. Period.
Yeah.
Bryn's wrong. I first do want to honor, and this has to be said, that I think Bryn's going through a lot. And I think
Yes.
the stuff that she's going through has nothing to do with these women. And
Mhm.
I think that because she's going through that, there are certain behaviors that are coming about.
Yeah. Yeah, she has so many huge traumas where one of them would take a person out, and she has them
Wow.
layered. And I think what was hard for me when I watched the finale was I was like, this was supposed to be fun and this became really traumatic to watch. It was just
It
like
got
I
dark.
was yeah,
It got
cuz I
dark.
was like, "Oh my god, you can see all her trauma just spilling out." And it makes you so emotional for her, but then it's like you also see the potential for the damage of that, and that's just really scary. I really felt for the rest of the ladies cuz they're like, "How do we deal with her now?" Like what do we do?
I think, like, in my Uber voice, like, girl, I'm gonna have to send you with some love, but we gonna need to separate, right? Because
Mhm.
people have to understand, like, even in real life, like, not even on TV, like, there's intention and there's impact. So even though you
Mhm.
did not intend to, like, hurt me so deeply, does not mean that you didn't do it. And
Right.
both of those things can live in the same circle,
Mhm.
if you will.
In the reunion, you can kind of feel Bryn hearing I'm bad instead of the things they're saying, which is that we recognize your pain, but you also did something that wasn't nice. It's just really hard to see that and her struggling with that. It was so honest and raw and sad, but she still did something really damaging to someone else.
And also something not only damaging and hurtful, but that could, like, really damage someone's reputation,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
I felt like it was very weaponizing for Uba for so many reasons of, like, number
Mhm.
1, you guys have a friendship, so that's just
Yeah.
foundationally, but I'm not gonna sit here and lie. We cannot sit here and not pretend the race stuff within that,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah.
Uba is a very dark-skinned woman, beautiful woman,
Who also
um,
has an accent and is an immigrant, right?
as an immigrant who
Yeah.
has spoken about the racism she had in the model industry in the 90s and frankly probably still has it today. Like America
Yeah.
hasn't changed very much, right?
Mm.
Bryn is this white passing
Biracial.
biracial woman that as a dark skinned black woman who's had to
Mhm.
navigate that where it's like I can't walk into rooms and not be black or not be perceived as black,
Yeah.
right? I also think that you have Uba on the show who's clearly like the black woman.
And
It was
also,
a lot.
like
It's layered. I'm still processing, but it's layered.
yeah, and also just Bryn kind of saying to her at one point earlier in the season, like, "You need to calm down because you might be perceived as the angry black woman." I don't know, like, verbatim exactly how she said that,
Yeah.
but it was something to that effect, and she really didn't like that, and I definitely don't think that should have been said on TV if she wanted to say it to her, but it was just like, I don't know how to, like, process that,
Well, I'll be
right?
very frank with you. It should never been said, period.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I cannot speak for Uba. I cannot speak for anyone. I can only speak for myself. But no one
Mhm.
is going to step to me with that language
Mhm.
unless one, you are a dark skinned black woman.
Mhm.
And two, we have the kind of relationship where you can say that without me retaliating.
Mhm.
Because for me, I'm like, you're right. Black women, dark skinned Black women get perceived as angry and Black and aggressive just for saying, like, I don't like chocolate milk. Right. But
Yeah.
when you walk around in a lighter skin tone, saying everything but calling everybody but a child of God, making
Yeah.
all these witty comments. And because of the color of your skin and how people perceive you, which is not as a black woman, but as a white woman, you get away with it. It's cute, it's witty, it's
Yeah.
quirky, right?
Yeah.
You don't get to have that conversation with me.
Mhm.
You don't. Because
Yeah.
how I interpret that is, oh, so you see me as an angry black woman. I did the
Mhm.
exact same thing you did yesterday, and you see me as an angry black woman.
And I feel like that's how Uba took it.
That's how I would have taken it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have an issue with that because I'm not going to lie to you. If it was me in the situation, I wouldn't have looked at Bryn as, oh, this is my sister in blackness. I'd be like, girl, sit
Mhm.
down.
Yeah.
Because when you do it, no one sees you as a black woman.
Yeah.
So we're not like that. That's a conversation that I'm not going to entertain because it would have never ended positively. So honestly, like the fact that Uba took that and was like, I'm sad, but it's okay. I was like, girl, you've been blessed by God. Cause I would have been like, we're done. We're done.
Okay.
Because to me, it was so layered of like, you really think that you can say anything to me. You really think that our experiences in the world are the same.
Mhm. Yeah, that's interesting. Watching this season in particular, that's not brought up. Like, I don't know that Bryn's willing to bring it up. And maybe Uba, I'm wondering what her thoughts and experience are on race, because sometimes when I see her talking, I feel like she has a very immigrant perspective and sometimes she has a Black perspective. And I feel like she's maybe trying to figure out still how to navigate that. And so I don't feel like it was like brought up enough or in the right way to where she was like upset about it, but I don't know that the viewers got articulation of like all the layers of it, you know?
In my friend chat, I had a Black friend who really wrote when it happened. She was like, Brim better be glad Uba has an immigrant experience. That's what my
Mm,
friend said. And I said, why?
interesting.
And she said, because you and I both know if Uba was a Black woman who was like 3 generations American,
Yeah.
if Uba was Keisha from Detroit,
Mhm.
okay, Veronica from Philly,
Mhm.
that reaction would have been different. And I was like, you are 100% right. I think Bring got saved because Uba's trying to navigate all those
Yeah.
experiences.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
she makes an offhanded comment at the end of the last reunion. Andy says something to her about, Black experience in America being tough or something like that. And she said, I've had a great experience. Like I get things for free and I'm hot and like all this stuff. Right. And that kind of, I was like,
It
I'm
was
like,
very cringeworthy, but I
yeah,
think that shows you the immigrant experience,
yeah,
but it also shows you the pretty privilege experience.
right. Yeah,
Like, y'all, we have to understand that Uba is a supermodel.
right.
And she's gorgeous. And more importantly, we got to be very specific is she's one gorgeous because she's a human. All humans are
Yeah,
gorgeous. But her beauty is aligned to the white standards of exotic beauty and she gets paid because of that beauty,
right.
right?
Yeah.
So like she's in a class all by herself.
For the full version of this episode and much more, join our paid feed at patreon.com/chai after dark. And as always, rate us, give us 5 stars only, please. Write us a lovely review. We'd love to hear it. And don't forget to follow us on all our socials. We're at Chai After Dark on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Blue Sky, and everywhere. Have a great weekend.